In my experience, there's two forms of apprehension that people have when they encounter Judaism. One of them is what we mentioned already, which is like, why isn't Judaism more spiritual? I think this hesitation comes, as we discussed, from the soul itself. The soul itself could get out of touch with what it's doing. If it is so perfect that it has so much goodness inside of it, which it does, so then it has to use it, it has to give it, and it has to elevate the lower parts of us and the world around us. But the second sort of hesitation flows from the first, which is, okay, so now if we're all doing these mitzvot, so then aren't we all the same? Are we really supposed to be a bunch of penguins? This, I think, is a really important question. When I was in high school, I had the privilege of being taught by the legendary Mrs. Marie Miller, an English teacher who was renowned through the school for her total dedication to her students and the potentially negative scores you could get on her tests. One of her pet peeves was when people would write very unique. She would say, you can't be very unique. Unique means one and only. So if you are unique, there is no one like you. The notion of being unique is axiomatic to Jewish thought. The universe was created perfectly by a perfect creator. A perfect creation has nothing extra, nothing purposeless, nothing random, which means that each and every person you meet, including yourself, is here on purpose. There has never been anyone like you before. There is no one like you now, and there will never be anyone like you in the future. This idea is not just some far out metaphysical fact. This idea is a deep perception in the human psyche. This is the kind of idea that keeps you up at night when you wonder, are you doing what you were born to do? Are you bringing to the world the unique light that you and only you have to share? It's for this reason that trying to be unique, I think, is totally overrated. Not only is it overrated, I actually think it's counterproductive. I know that in my own life, when I try to do something really different, let's say at work or something, I usually do bad work. I remember as a teenager saying things to kind of stand out, and whenever I would do that, it just came off like wrong, like not genuine. And even as a writer, when I write, I usually overwrite. It's too flowery, it's over the top. And I think the lesson from this is that we shouldn't try to be unique, because if you try to be unique, it's actually distracting you from realizing that you already are. The part of the soul that we're talking about now is called the chaya. Chaya means life force, like the word chai, life, made famous with chai necklaces, or l'chaim, to life, when we make a cheers. This life force, it flows through you. It doesn't come from something you eat or drink, but it comes from within. Just to illustrate, in 1972, in Lawrenceville, Georgia, there was a guy named Tony Cavallo who was repairing his Chevrolet Impala from underneath the car. At some point, the car fell off the jacks and fell onto Tony. I don't exactly know how it happened, but his mother was watching from the kitchen, and without really being aware of what was happening, she ran out. She picked up the car and she yelled for help from the neighbors and held it long enough for these neighbors to put up new jacks to sustain the car and get Tony out from underneath. Where did she get that energy from? She got that energy from the knowledge that there was only one person who was going to be able to save her son, and it was her. This story, to me, reminds me of a phenomenon which was discovered by the Hungarian-American psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, one of the great scholars in the positive psychology movement. He described people who would get into this zone in their work that was of a different category than any other kind of work that people do. You know when they say if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life? So that seems to be what happened to these people. When they were in this zone, channeling this energy, it looked almost effortless. They could work really long hours and have really high levels of happiness and well-being while they were doing it. This comes from tapping into a deeper part of ourselves. It could mean something in the professional world, and certainly when it's spoken about in deeper mystical Jewish sources, it's talking about doing this in our entire lives, channeling the deepest part of who we are. It requires a certain appreciation of ourselves, embracing ourselves, a certain courage to lean into our strengths. But what it is not that we are actively doing something, but that we are allowing a flow, a life force, an energy to flow through us. Judaism is not meant to homogenize us by getting us to all do the same thing. What a mitzvah is really a framework for allowing us to express the deeper parts of who we are and get into a flow and a routine by doing it. Okay, let's say you have two artists and you want to see their differences. You can't have one do a sculpture and one do a surrealist painting. Of course they're going to produce different work. It's totally different projects. What you want to do is have both of them sculpt or both of them paint a surrealist painting. And then you'll see the nuances of how they did it, how they look at it. That's a pretty good metaphor for what Judaism is. Judaism is not paint by number where you have to do it in exactly this way. Judaism is kind of the dimensions of the canvas and maybe a selection, a palette of colors that you're meant to use on that canvas. But then how you do it, how you put it together is going to look different for sure with every single person. And if you don't have the canvas and you don't have the palette, so then you're never gonna see what makes you fully unique. After all this talk on individuality, you might actually now be thinking the other way, like, really? Like we're all so different? Like really we're all the same, aren't we? Like we're all humans, we're all just doing our best. So that, my friends, is a great segue to the next part in our series.